A silent, soul-splitting moment when everything you thought you wanted starts to crack. You look at the things you once chased with blind devotion. Love, companionship, the dream of a future spent with someone who whispers promises of understanding. But then it hits you. What if it was all a lie? Arthur Schopenhauer didn't just wonder about this, he tore it apart. He was one of those rare thinkers who had the guts to peer straight into the dark, messy machinery of human desire, and refused to look away. Where the world dressed romance up to salvation, Schopenhauer saw it as seduction. Not in the sexy, harmless way you hear about in movies, but as a biological trap, a beautifully wrapped prison designed by nature itself. He believed what the world celebrates as love is, more often than not, a carefully staged illusion. What we call intimacy, he exposed as biology wearing the mask of poetry. And that connection you swear is real? He argued it's just suffering dressed up as something noble. To Schopenhauer, the fundamental difference between men and women wasn't just physical. It was metaphysical. He believed men are drawn to ideas, to creation, to ideals bigger than themselves, philosophy, art, meaning, while women, in his view, remain tethered to the immediate, the practical, the instinct for survival. He once wrote that women remain children their whole lives, always chasing what's closest to them, clinging to the present moment, mistaking appearance for reality. Now, and this is important, he didn't say it to insult women. He saw it as a raw biological reality, a glimpse into how nature wired us differently, for different roles, for different purposes. And beauty. Schopenhauer called it for what it is, a mask, a lure, a biological bait designed to disarm a man's judgment, to pull him away from his higher pursuits, and reduce him to a servant of his own urges. And the terrifying part? It works. Time and time again, throughout history, men who built empires, who shaped civilizations, who conquered armies, didn't fall in battle, or to their enemies. They fell to the soft voice and gentle touch of a woman they never truly understood. Schopenhauer argued that since women didn't have the power to build armies or empires, they mastered something else entirely: influence, subtlety, emotional persuasion. They shaped the men who shaped the world, not through brute force, but through charm, through need, through an uncanny ability to weave themselves into a man's soul without him even noticing. And the world calls this love, pretends it's sacred, but Schopenhauer saw it for what it is: a biological transaction wrapped in poetry, an instinctual contract designed to keep the species going, not to make you happy. He wrote that love, the way we experience it, is not what it seems. It's not about meeting of souls, or some cosmic destiny of hearts. It's the will to life, that blind, relentless force within all living things, acting through us to ensure we reproduce. It doesn't care about your ambitions, your peace of mind, your personal happiness. It cares about one thing: survival. And to achieve it, it dresses up necessity in the robes of romance. It makes you believe this time it's different, that she's the one, that you found some eternal connection. And by the time you realize it's an illusion, you're already in too deep. To Schopenhauer, marriage wasn't a sacred bond. It was the final act in a man's downfall, a legally binding illusion. A contract signed in hope and paid for in regret. He believed that once a man surrendered to beauty and promise, he was no longer free, not because of some tyrannical wife, but because he'd handed over his autonomy to a biological impulse wearing a smile. In this view, marriage was nature's way of locking in reproduction, and the man, once noble, once a seeker of truth, gets reduced to a laborer, a provider, a beast of burden. He toils not for glory or personal fulfillment, but to sustain a structure that slowly drains him. And then the beauty fades. The enchantment wears off. What's left? Resentment, silence, a slow, gnawing disillusionment. The freedom he once possessed, the freedom to think, to create, to wander, to pursue truth, is replaced with obligation, responsibility, routine. Schopenhauer famously wrote, "Marriage is a trap set by nature, the will to live, wrapped in illusion, with a woman's smile as the bait. Beneath it all is instinct, survival, repetition, no hatred, no villainy, just nature's ruthless agenda ticking away." He didn't see women as evil. He saw them as agents of nature's design, driven by instincts they themselves might not even be fully aware of. Their aim wasn't personal malice, it was security, survival for themselves, for their children. And to achieve that, women developed a kind of emotional intelligence superior to men. Not strength, not logic, but persuasion, intuition, influence. And it works because most men are blind to it. They step into an emotional battlefield armed with logic when they should be armed with awareness. They fight with reason in a realm where instinct rules. In this arrangement, men often become pawns. They build the house, but it's no longer theirs. They climb the career ladder only to hand over the spoils. They dream, but those dreams shrink under the weight of someone else's comfort. And all the while, society claps, calls it maturity, responsibility, even love. But Schopenhauer wasn't buying it. He challenged men to question, what if this isn't growth, but surrender? What if the man who gives up his fire isn't evolving? He's fading. He believed the tragedy isn't that men love, it's that they love blindly. They offer their souls to an idea they've never questioned. They confuse seduction for sincerity, desire for destiny, and when reality finally catches up, they're left with more than just a broken heart. They're left with a broken life. Schopenhauer's brilliance wasn't in bitterness, it was in clarity. He stripped away the sentimental nonsense and exposed the raw, unfiltered mechanics of human nature. He saw men not as oppressors or monsters, but as victims of their own illusions, noble by nature, but vulnerable to the very things they thought would complete them. Because the greatest achievements of man, the empires, the masterpieces, the discoveries, can crumble the moment a man surrenders to his unchecked desire, the moment he trades his purpose for fleeting approval, the moment he reshapes his identity to be more palatable, more agreeable, more desirable. In doing so, he forgets who he is. And for Schopenhauer, that was the most tragic betrayal a man could commit. Not against society, not against women, but against himself. Because what is the worth of a man who forgets himself? What happens to his spirit when he no longer lives for truth, but for validation? Schopenhauer argued that men aren't usually broken by war or poverty or hardship. No, most men are broken by love, or more accurately, by the illusion of it, by the soft, addictive poison of dependency. And it's here, in this quiet collapse, that women, knowingly or not, hold their power. They don't need to dominate through force. They don't need to issue orders. Their power lies in presence, in charm, in silence. They rarely demand obedience. Men offer it. They rarely ask for sacrifice. Men volunteer it. And so begins the erosion. First, it's the time he once gave to his ambitions. Then, it's the fire that used to burn for his craft. Next, it's the solitude that once birthed ideas. One by one, those pillars fall. And the man who once stood tall, driven by mission, meaning, and unfiltered curiosity, finds himself kneeling, not in reverence, but in resignation. His purpose becomes maintenance. His joy becomes avoidance. His dreams shrink to fit inside the four walls of someone else's expectations. And yet, the world celebrates this, calls it love, maturity, responsibility. It pats him on the back and tells him this is what it means to be a man, but Schopenhauer called it something else. He called it tragedy. He warned men of this fate, not because he hated women, but because he wanted men to wake up, to see the forces at play before it was too late. He spoke to men not as enemies of women, but as seekers of truth, because in Schopenhauer's philosophy, it's not women who destroy men, It's men's ignorance of women. It's the romanticized delusions they refuse to question. The failure to understand what drives the dance of attraction and what it often costs. The tragedy isn't that men love, but that they love without clarity, that they confuse biology with destiny, seduction with sincerity, and fantasy with connection. And when those illusions fade, they're left with broken hearts, and worse, broken lives. Schopenhauer's genius wasn't in bitterness. It was in the brutal honesty to say out loud what others only feel in the dead of night. He stripped away sentiment and exposed the raw mechanical forces moving quietly beneath human behavior. He saw men as noble by nature, builders of cities, painters of masterpieces, seekers of wisdom, but all of it, every achievement, every discovery, every ounce of progress could crumble the moment a man surrendered to a desire he didn't understand. Because the moment a man lives for someone else's approval, he starts reshaping himself. He becomes agreeable where he was once honest. He becomes comfortable where he was once ambitious. He becomes tame where he was once wild. And with every compromise, he loses a little more of who he was meant to be. Schopenhauer believed this was the greatest betrayal a man could commit. Not against society, not even against the woman he loves, but against himself, against his own mind, his own potential, his own soul. He believed most men aren't defeated by external forces. They're defeated by internal submission, not by tyrants or empires, but by the quiet trade-offs they make in exchange for momentary affection, validation, or peace. The trade-offs that feel harmless in the moment, but collectively drain the life out of a man's spirit. Schopenhauer observed that men don't lose their greatness in one dramatic fall. They lose it in tiny, quiet surrenders. First to the soft request, then to the silent expectation, then to the weight of comfort. Until the man who once chased the horizon now settles for the fence in his backyard. And the world applauds this, calls it adulthood, responsibility, progress. But Schopenhauer challenged us to ask, what if it isn't growth? What if it's just a slow, polite death? The truly awakened man, he argued, sees through these illusions, not with bitterness, but with clarity. He doesn't hate women. He understands them. He doesn't reject love, but sees it for what it is, a force to be respected, not worshipped. And most importantly, he guards his soul against being consumed by the things that promise happiness, but only deliver distraction. This isn't a call for isolation, but for awareness. To step back, look at your life, and ask, am I the man I was meant to be? Or have I slowly become someone else for the sake of peace, validation, or fleeting pleasure? Schopenhauer's voice wasn't angry. It was quiet, steady, and mercilessly honest. A message echoing through time for men ready to see. For men who've suffered enough to finally ask, why? For the ones who've chased love, lost themselves, and now want something real. Not attention, not distraction, not momentary warmth, but truth. And here's the truth. A man who doesn't understand his own desires is ruled by them. A man who doesn't understand women is vulnerable to them. And a man who builds his identity on the promises of romance will watch that identity collapse the moment those promises shatter. Schopenhauer didn't write for everyone. He wrote for the few, the outliers, the men tired of the script, the ones starting to sense that what they were told would fulfill them, didn't. And now they're ready to hear the thing no one says out loud. That maybe, just maybe, the highest form of man isn't the lover, or the husband, or even the warrior. It's the philosopher, the one who sees the game for what it is, and chooses not to play. The man who turns his back on applause, attention, and seduction, not because he's bitter, but because he sees. Because in Schopenhauer's world, only the man who detaches can be truly free. Only the man who renounces the illusion of fulfillment through others can begin to understand his own nature. He pointed to the great men of solitude, Buddha, the Stoics, the saints, the sages, who walked alone, not because they were unloved, but because they refused to trade peace for momentary affection. They saw through the mirage of romantic salvation. They chose wisdom over warmth, clarity over comfort. And in that solitude, Schopenhauer argued, a man finds his real power, not the kind that dominates others, but the kind that reclaims himself. And this path isn't for everyone. Most will reject it. Most will call it cold, detached, bitter. But those few who are ready to hear it, those men who are done pretending, they'll know. They'll feel it like a pulse in their chest, a recognition. Because truth has a sound. And once you hear it, you can't unhear it. So if you're watching this and something inside you stirred, don't run from it. Sit with it. Let it burn away the illusions you've clung to. Let it strip you of the lies about who you need to be and what will make you whole. You were never meant to live in chains disguised as comfort. You were never meant to die in a life built on compromise. You were meant to see clearly, to walk alone if you must, to rise, not because someone told you to, but because you remembered who you are. Let Schopenhauer's brutal truth be your mirror. Not so you can hate the world, but so you can stop being deceived by it. Because the man who can sit alone with his thoughts and feel no hunger, no longing, no ache for something more, is the man who cannot be controlled. And that, my friend, is the man who is finally, truly free. If this message shook something loose in you, share it. Hit the like button. Subscribe for more conversations that challenge the surface-level nonsense, and pass it on to someone who needs to hear what no one else dares say. Because the truth will set you free. But first, it will shatter everything you thought you knew.